security. And there we have it. We have a lot of information for our audience. Hey, Ken.
Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Oh, look at that. We got one person. I'm going to stop. Niles. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Ken.
Hey, Kenny.
We're going to ring the bell, kind of like we're home. All right, so we're going to start off with another minute or so, give everybody a chance to get in. We're going to just give them a couple minutes, and we'll come right back.
Yeah, Steven should be in. I talked to him last night. He's got a lot of good, as a lobbyist and everything, he has really got some great questions for today.
And if people want to if they have questions and they want to come on, when we do Q&A toward the end, we'll have you unmute yourself and turn your video on. But in the meantime, if you can please keep your off.
I'm sorry, you're
muted.
Out there, Ken.
That would be best. I'm going to stop.
We're losing you, Kenny.
Go ahead, Robert.
I just lost a piece of what you said.
Oh, okay.
Kenny, your mouth is not matching your words.
Oh, because I think.
Good thing you're not in court.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Or a good thing.
Yeah.
Or a good thing.
Like a comedian going. All right, so I'm gonna introduce Robert.
I'm trying to see which one of these works for the mute or unmute. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
all right.
Coming through real clear.
Yeah, we hear you a little scratchy there, Daniel. Oh, that sounds better. So Robert's the moderator of this panel, so I'm going to let him introduce the guest, but I'm going to introduce him because he's been one of our best MCs of shows for the last probably close to 25 years at least, so he needs a proper introduction. So Robert Perell is an internationally acclaimed author of Divine Blueprint, Roadman to the New Millennium, and The Divine Architect, The Art of Living and Beyond. He has been featured on CNN, Showtime, Fox News, CBS Nightly News, and has been a regular feature in Holistic and Science Expo since 1994, probably before that. His own direct contact with extraterrestrial life form happened in 1977. He's a commentator and MC on many shows, including New Living Expo, Conscious Life Expo, and Contact in the Desert, to name a few. So, Robert, I'm going to let you do the honors to introduce a couple of your buddies here. I'm going to mute these other people so we don't need to hear them.
Lovely. Okay.
I'm going to mute myself so it's better.
Robert, it said that Stephen came on and left the session.
Did you see him come on? I actually didn't see him come on. I talked to him last night. Was he on for a second?
It said Stephen Bassett came on the session and then he left the session.
It's a little complex, the getting onto this thing. It's a little different than the normal Zoom.
Yeah,
we're not Zoom, but
he'll enter back in. So
Stephen, I hear he's in the room. Why don't you unmute yourself and put your video on?
Okay, it says he's in the session, so he should be coming on. There we are. We have one of our guests. We have one of our viewers. How come these things always look like a police lineup? I'm sorry. Did I say that? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. I just...
Been in a mini one.
Okay. Well, we'll give Stephen a chance to get on here because we need our Washington, D.C.
It says he's in the session.
I don't see his image. Maybe, Tony, maybe you could get his image in there. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here on, that's right, that's my Sunday sermon. That actually goes later. Not that I'm a religious fellow, I'm a deeply devout spiritual fellow like yourself, Daniel.
Absolutely.
I never would want to preempt myself, and give them the wrong impression,
Religion is too insufficient to true spiritual reality.
I love that statement, and that's so absolutely true. It's a good guideline, I guess, maybe to learn about the virtues, being tolerant, selflessness, forgiveness, and kind, but the learn or burn part just kind of ruins it for me. That's what I used to be told when I was young. I used to get things like learn or burn. When I'm 8 years old, I don't even believe that.
So, Stephen, you're muted, your phone.
So a little technical stuff still going on. We'll come in here.
I guess why don't you start, Robert, with introducing your cast members, and then hopefully Stephen will chime in.
I want to say really quickly about my brother Daniel Brinkley here, who has been one of the great mentors of my life. And in some ways, Daniel, I'm not sure I would be completely here if it weren't for you opening those doors for me early in 1997. He is really the preeminent author I brought him on the panel today because he is wonderful at understanding the nature of existence. We are surrounded by a support body that include
You're not visible, Robert.
I'm not.
You can only see your ear.
You're only half on.
Hold on a second. Let me see if I can correct that.
There you go. Whoop. There you go.
Corrected?
No, it goes on and off. You're full screen. Whatever you're clicking, just slide to your right. There you go. Okay. No, too far. Too far.
Right there?
There you go, right there. But you've got another view that puts all of you in there. But I don't know what you click to make it work. But you're
Should I be full screen like you guys, Tony? Can you answer that?
There.
Everybody should be entering.
There you go. Now you're good. Now you're good right there, Robert.
Okay.
Bottom right-hand corner is enter full screen. Everybody should be on full screen. It's much easier to see everything.
All right, I'm going to enter full screen. How's that?
Robert, you look great on most of our screens. It's just dependent on the browser. So if you're using a smaller device, Daniel, it may appear a bit different on yours. But if you see the chat board, a lot of people are saying that they can see you just fine.
Oh, good. Okay, well, Daniel is certainly the author of At Peace in the Light, Saved by the Light, which the last time I checked, I don't know, was some 13 million copies sold, maybe more, internationally all over the world. But more importantly, Daniel certainly died in the early 90s, flatlined for 28 minutes, went to the other side, saw how creation is sort of knitted together, and then came back to write an extraordinary book that tells us about the malleable realities. And I wanted him on the panel today because while we want to go into the legal aspect in Washington and the Pentagon, I wanted a spiritual side of this, where that spiritual side can be represented about what are we surrounded by, etc. Danny Sheehan is with me, and I'm a volunteer at the Romero Institute in Santa Cruz, California with him. He is the Harvard constitutional law attorney who has handled cases like the Pentagon Papers, the Iran-Contra affair, the famed winner in the Karen Silkwood first nuclear accident case. His Romero Institute is a law institute that heads up many things, certainly the Green New Deal, etc. But I brought him on the panel today only because his extraordinary input, like things that you said at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure in Washington, D.C., under Stephen Bassett, have the sort of legal aspect of how do we handle this? What is the Pentagon's position on this? What is the Defense Department's maybe position on this? How do we break away and present sort of a legal case for extraterrestrial intervention into our atmosphere? It seems like mind-boggling when you think about that, the potentials of that. And Stephen Bassett is with us somewhere, and he's coming on here. He's having a little trouble here. He's the director of the Paradigm Research Institute, located in Washington, D.C., and has had a long background in understanding national security, the Defense Department. And, of course, he is an exopolitic activist, leading advocate for ending the 65-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding extraterrestrial engaging with the human race. I'm going to lead off here with a question here first, and I'll let you guys attack it. You know, we are on the cusp of the single greatest event in the course of human history. Not everybody knows that. They would maybe pick a different subject, but certainly after we've seen the pandemic, the fires, even I got evacuated. We have what are we going to do about the extraterrestrials? So my question, let's go to Danny first, and then I want to immediately go over to Daniel. Elon Musk has developed about 13 to 15,000 satellites that they nicknamed the bread box. These are, as we speak now, being dropped into our atmosphere, not only for the advance of like 5G and convenience, and you can download your apps quicker and movies, whatever. I have got it on fairly good authority that they're there for also another purpose. They need to monitor the ionosphere and the troposphere. They need to monitor that outer layer of what's coming into our atmosphere, because we have an intrusion of these globes. They're orbs and spheres. Yes, sometimes saucers, but globes or orbs are constantly monitored. We have a listening device coming in here that's non-terrestrial. What do you know about this? Elon Musk, SpaceX, and this and surrounding us and blanketing the Earth literally in a frequency where we can watch things in real time.
Well, the major challenge of what's going on with the 5G satellite enclosure, basically, that is underway right now, is twofold. One is sort of a terrestrial concern, and that is that this type of extraordinary monitoring process that is going on of you're being able to, in the middle of a jungle somewhere, be able to get a cell phone reception. Also has the other side of it is that you can be monitored wherever it is that you are at any given time, any day, time of day or night. That certain people who are in charge of this network can ascertain where you are. And as we know, people who are able to get video pictures on their telephone and broadcast to other people, those telephones clearly can be turned on by other people. Siri, if you have a phone where you can talk to Siri, they can listen to you. They've got them now in people's homes where, you ought to realize that if you can turn to your phone and say, "Hello, Siri," and she just comes on and says, "Oh yes, hello." Obviously they're listening all the time, and what they're doing is they're monitoring what you're talking about. They're purporting that this is for your own benefit. They're saying that, well, this enables them to better determine what it is you would like to buy, or where you would like to go on your next vacation, or who your associates are, that they can hook you up. That this taking advantage, the technocrats taking advantage of the fact that people don't care much about their privacy, and that they're willing to sacrifice their privacy for convenience, is a major problem, because the engulfing of our entire planet with literally thousands of satellites that are able to monitor where you are at any given time, in a system that's able to turn your telephone on, your cell phone, your televisions, the monitors in your home, so that they can monitor everything that you're doing. There's not any doubt from a point of view of a constitutional lawyer that the United States government and other governments are going to be able to get access to that information, and they're going to be able to get access to that system whenever it is they want to. Now, they're going to be constantly claiming that there's some national emergency or some pending constant national emergency situation like the war on terrorism, where they have to monitor every single conversation, every single person where they are, or at least under the Obama administration and the Biden administration, be able to record all of that so it can be retrieved if, in fact, the government determines that they want to have it. They are trying to placate people by saying that, well, we're not monitoring you all the time. We're just recording everything all the time, and that we won't go get it unless we go to a judge whom we happen to appoint. So that's the one side. That's the terrestrial concern about all of this. The extraterrestrial concern about all of this is that this entire system it can very easily be part of a monitoring system to be able to monitor whatever type of coming and going is going on with regard to the extraterrestrial civilization coming and going to our planet. We've known, at least since 1947 in the Roswell incident, that the United States government is fully aware of the fact that this is going on. And they, inside the Defense Department in the national security state, have viewed it as part of their task, part of their privilege, to attempt to, quote, protect us and our airspace against such what they refer to as intrusions. And it's all a system of control. They would want to have absolute, total, full spectrum dominance and control over all of our airspace. All of our airspace and all of our land space. And so this is a subset of the threat of a national security state. And that's what we're confronted by on our planet. And it's one of those phases that we have to be able to demonstrate as a species that we can get past, we can get through. Just like we need to be able to get through the age of potential nuclear war. We need to be able to get through the age of potential global climate change. We need to be able to make it through these species-threatening events in order to merit full citizenship, actually, in a celestial civilization. And these are all tests that our human family is being subjected to right now by ourselves. And we are being watched, and I'm sure being monitored, and not just by the extraterrestrial civilization, but by the spiritual domain. There's an actual extra dimensional realm that we're very much aware of, and this is where it starts to interface with the spiritual community, because while there are distinct categories of extraterrestrial material manifest energy beings in the universe, there's a lot of confusion that's gone on over the past several millennia on the part of our human family as to which of these are in a spiritual dimension, which are in an extraterrestrial dimension, etc. This is an extremely complex field, and it merits very close attention on the part of our human family, which it's not being given right now. That we have the National Security State Group, the Defense Department, the National Security Agency, CIA, FBI, all of these people who are experiencing this whole phenomenon as a threat primarily to their exclusive control. And they're a dangerous group of people, our people, because they're trying to figure out how to neutralize this group, how to overcome the group, how to challenge the group, how to ultimately militarily combat this community, which is extraordinarily foolish. There's another whole community on the other end, which are the I guess you would call them the New Age people, who may be a bit naive collectively about all this, and are assuming that the extraterrestrial civilization is the same thing as the spiritual domain, and it's not clear what the relationship is between these. But I brought this up, as you know, Robert, and Damien, I've mentioned this to you in the past, that back when I was chief counsel for the United States Jesuit headquarters, their national social ministry office in Washington, D.C., developing policy positions for the Society of Jesus, the largest single denomination or order inside the Catholic Church, which of course is the largest single religious denomination in Western civilization. I was trying to get the 54 major religious communities in the United States to come to grips with this issue of their rather primitive understanding of the spiritual realm, that they had gotten themselves trapped through the Catholic Church largely in a medieval kind of structure and formation of what their understanding was of the spiritual dimension. And because of the institutionalization of this and the kind of solidifying and ossifying of these particular medieval concepts, and their conflating of their authority with the authority of the Roman Empire, that we've got this this very important concern on the part of genuinely spiritual people about the religious communities and religious institutions. I was attempting to try to overcome this as early as 1977 when I was invited to be a participant in the special study that President Jimmy Carter asked for to investigate the issue of UFOs and the potential existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. I was privileged to be invited to participate in that from the Jesuit headquarters, and I brought a motion to the Washington Interreligious Staff Council, the alliance of 54 of the major religious denominations in the country, to try to get them to set up a task force to start working on this, to try to figure out how to modernize their concepts of spirituality, to come to grips with the 21st century that would be upcoming for us to deal with our extraterrestrial neighbors, and to try to understand what the relationship is between our extraterrestrial neighbors and this extra-dimensional realm right here on our own planet and elsewhere in the universe. So, and the interposition of the national security state in the midst of all of this is an extremely complicating factor. And so that I've, as you also know, I've spent a lot of time dealing with the national security state, filing lawsuits against them, and trying to stop them from invading people's privacy and stopping covert operations, et cetera. That I think this is an extraordinarily rich field to be explored. It's an extraordinarily challenging field. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 50 years investigating this and like to make myself available within the community here to share my views from a point of view of law, from a point of view of constitutional principles, issues of privacy, but very importantly, issues of spirituality and extra dimensionality of this phenomenon. So that's my potential offering to help on this thing, and I'm deeply concerned, as I've shared with you in the past, that we need within the UFO community and the extraterrestrial exploration community of our human family, we need to exercise great and responsible care to not allow people in our community to be taking advantage of the importance of this particular issue to exploit it by fabricating, making up information, lying. There are a number of charlatans that have been exposed in this area over history, and we need to be on guard about this without violating people's First Amendment rights to say whatever it is they tend to feel. We need to be careful to maintain the credibility of the work that we all do together and have spent years and years doing to try to figure out how to be of maximum assistance to our human family at this extraordinarily important period in our human history where we're on the very brink of stepping out into intergalactic space and having a direct contact and communication with an extraterrestrial civilization in some sort of collective way. We have it happening individually now, but the ushering in of an age where we have a collective relationship as a human species with this extraterrestrial civilization is right on the very cusp of taking place right now. And so this is an extraordinarily important issue, and I'm glad that the Living Expo people and the others from other consciousness gatherings are attempting to integrate this issue into our discussions.
Thank you. It's an extraordinary amount of clarity. I want to reach over to Daniel here for a second because Daniel, you have a military background, certainly has had a background in understanding protocols, information, the way information is disseminated, how vital or sensitive that information can be, and you're also the spiritual side. So I'd like you to echo a little bit about what Danny just said there, and bring us up to date with how you're feeling about all of this.
Well, I think it's an absolutely exciting time. I have waited 70 years to be alive in this particular time, and I've gotten up from the dead 3 or 4 times to make sure I was here. Here's what I think is, I agree with a lot of what Danny is saying, but remember, the more that AI and the more that the use of cell phones and the more that use of the so-called chip implants, you know as well as I do, Robert, I wrote all about this in it when I wrote Saved by the Light 25 years ago. I described exactly where we would be. It's chapter 5, box 12, Saved by the Light, written in 1994. So I have only just watched and waited for all this to come true since I had the vision in 1975 of these 12 boxes. But here's what's important. All of this technology and all of this illusion that they're creating to set up control of us is only going to expose that we are electrical beings. And once you understand that you are an electrical being, you begin to understand the relationship of your spirituality to your electrical nature. And as you understand that you're an electrical being, you can see how 5G, 6G, 7G as weaponizing machinery can be used against us. But each day that they use this information, it only makes us more aware that we're electrical. Then we are spiritual. I have a pretty good understanding of interdimensional beings as well as extraterrestrial beings, because in 1983, when I was in Peru for 31 trips to Peru, I had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Jimenez Borta, who was the god of Peruvian archaeology. I have seen a extraterrestrial being, maybe 3.7 feet tall, close to 4 feet tall. He looked a lot like the so-called grays that people describe, except his skin color was about your color, Robert, on what I'm looking at. And I saw a being that Dr. Borta had literally in a box. It was a winged being. It was human in shape except for the feet, and it had wings, and it had like a cloth on it. It wasn't fake, because he would never have that. I've seen elongated skulls. I've seen model airplanes from Nazca, because he was willing to show me all of this stuff because I made so many trips. Everybody thinks the Inca are so important. Their existence is like 150 years, where the Mulche are about 20,000 based on Peruvian information. But as Danny was describing this gate that they're putting us into, this locking us into the control of the planet, you also have to understand that 5G and 6G, when you get above 80 gigahertz, you're talking about intense microwave. How does that affect an electrical body? Your body is not a physical or chemical body. It is electrical. Protons, electrons, and neutrons, neutrino-driven forces. Once you've been outside of this body and you've made the journey to the dimensional realities that we call the heavens, which I've had 4 of these adventures, then you begin to look at this life from an electrical point of view. I think what they're doing is exposing themselves to us identifying our ethereal nature. They are recording everything. When you listen to all this information that's coming out about quote unquote election fraud, this election fraud story is giving us insight into intelligence and how it operates. And although I've been a part in various phases of my life of that, 94 countries and 6 wars, I have a pretty good idea that they are recording and using as advanced technology that none of us hear about to record and identify us. But what makes me the happiest about this, Robert and Danny, is this. No matter what they do, they will expose themselves. And like the Maya said, at the end of 2012, December 21st, 2012, the era that just passed and the new era that started, the Maya said, all things not done in integrity would collapse. Well, that's what happened to us. 2008, 2012. But it says from December 21st, 2012 forward, for the next 25,920 years, there will be no secrets. So they've been pretty accurate with their calendar and how they've structured and understood how the universe works. If you think about the Maya, we discovered Neptune in 1844. Mayas discovered Neptune in 2431 BCE. We discovered Pluto in 1932. They discovered Pluto in 2431 BCE. So their knowledge and understanding of this kind of stuff is pretty accurate. So the more that we see and the more that we hear, the more electrical we realize the universe is, the more electrical the atmosphere is, and more we begin to understand a concept of our spiritual identity. But I wrote all this 25 years ago. I saw it all 45 years ago. And it's exciting to the revelations of what those boxes of knowledge are going to bring us to understand. We are dimensional beings. We occupy more space than this physical appearance. And if you don't stop and realize that that's true, you're going to miss so much of the information that you're being fed, and you're going to apply to you as negative or control or manipulation. But in the course of it, you're going to realize how divinely spiritual and electrical you are. And this is only part of your reality. And you happen to be participating in this when you appear to be awake. But you're participating in other levels of consciousness at the same time. And they are betraying themselves.
Outstanding. I want to echo your point about. I think that we are starving for wisdom. We're drowning in information, and we're starving for wisdom. And television.
But that's a ploy.
Yes,
that's a part of structured disinformation. If you feed so many different information and so many different points, so many different perspectives, you can never come to a conclusion. It's standard protocol, propaganda, operating procedure.
Yeah, it really is. The whole cell phone generation, laptops, is distracting us. I've seen your lectures many times. It's distracting us from really who or what we really could be. It's sort of also conditioning us and getting us used to the accepted norm. I have to say I blame Hollywood for a lot of this too, because it's the constant bombardment of gratuitous violence as the accepted norm, and all these other things that take us away from our spiritual aspect. I mean, I could go on and on and on, and I won't. I'll just say really
right
before we go over to Danny, and if we can get, I think Stephen is coming in here. I see he's trying to get in here, so I definitely want to turn it over to him. At this point, just a little clarification. Somebody just yesterday asked me, said, "Well, you're on this UFO panel. What got you into this business?" What a loaded question. For people who don't know me, for some unknown reason to this day, in 1977, I was met by what looked like 3 astronauts, taken out of the house, brought back, covered in some kind of honey, and had a head-to-toe sunburn, locked myself in my apartment for 3 months, until I went and met Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the actual founder of this, in what's called what really would be considered the first UFO conference of its kind. And so it started my long journey. And I know that I still get it from my family all the time. My sister says, first it had to be, life after death. Then it had to be the study of this esoteric thing. Now, finally, it's the extraterrestrials. You're scaring the family. Why can't you just be normal? I said, we can't be normal. You can't be really normal in this. As another mention, because I want to go over, and I got a question for Danny. I get stuff like this all the time. I'll show a little quick visual. People send me stuff like this all the time. They send me writings from people that seem to be some sort of Sanskrit, almost in some sort of English-like language. We haven't been able to decipher some of this. Dan, you were talking about some of these sacred writings and things that pour through people. We are connected to a network that is split up between an extraterrestrial science story of people that are observing the human experience, our DNA. As we grow, they grow. So we are definitely part of some kind of experiment, and then the spiritual aspects has us here because of some kind of karmic debt.
Robert, let me say something. That first visual that you put up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it looks like this.
That is a language of frequencies. It's almost musical notes and a language of frequencies. And the second one looks like a modified version of an old Arabic script.
Yes.
If you look at ancient Arabic, you will see so many of these words in an ancient Arabic text, ancient. But the other is a language of musical frequencies.
Yes. The gentleman that writes these goes into a trance. He has no control over it. His body goes into like a sleep-like state. We normally write with our right hand from right to left. That's pretty normal. He writes it left hand from right to left and in reverse. So what you see here is actually the version that's already reversed. You can see a T and J, and you can see various things right there. So these are the kind of things that are pouring through us. Obviously, they have a certain amount of control of our experience. And with that, I want to go to Stephen Bassett. Welcome, Stephen Bassett. I've already done your introduction. You're looking up as if you're trying to find them for sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm going to try to bring you down so that I can get the camera set up in the right position.
Eyes are very blue on this screen. Very much. We're talking about a number of things here: national security. We were talking about the Defense Department. We were talking about spirituality. I mean, we're covering it all today. I want to know a quick question from you, which you really are the designer, builder, and the architect of the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. And as far as disclosure, which is one of the biggest questions in this panel, I want you to describe disclosure to me, and I want to ask you if did you achieve your goal with the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure? Where are we at from that point to now?
Yes and no. Let me first say that I'm very pleased that the concept of disclosure is now turning up all over the internet, on Facebook, on Twitter. We've had a number of people that are actually posting regularly. It is becoming hopefully soon, the dominant issue regarding the UAP-ET reality, as opposed to sightings. Oh God, we've had enough sightings to last for 10,000 years. So that's good. My work is getting disclosure. That's what it's all about. What is that? It is defined by the activist movement as formal confirmation of the ET presence by heads of state. That's an event. It's an announcement. It's a confirmation. That's all it is. The disclosure, and that's why it's a capital D. The disclosure process, small d, is the evidence raising work that's been done for 70 years. Everything every attempt by the citizen science research community to get documents, to research cases, study findings, publish books, create videos, raise the awareness of the public, the journalists, all of that is small d disclosure. I call it the disclosure process. And all of that is leading toward what? Not, I don't know, the public accepting this event or that event, or believing whether Roswell are real or not real. That's the evidence. People can believe it, not believe it. It's heading toward the confirmation by the government of the ET presence, and that has to be the president. Why is that important? Because the government has known about the ET presence for 70 years. Think about that for a second. 70 years. They've been investigating the phenomena for 70 years. They've been dealing with ET technology for 70 years, reverse engineering ET technology, right? And They have executed fairly well a program within the confines of a democratic republic, which is what we are, a truth embargo. That's another phrase that I developed. What's the truth embargo? It's the formal policy of the United States that this issue will not be allowed to be accepted in the public domain, not by the top journalists, not by the colleges and universities, not by the intellectuals, not by the general public. It is a colossal, mammoth, 7-decade lie conducted for national security reasons, just like they lied about the Vietnam War for national security reasons and about the Iraq War for national security reasons and just about every other war we've had. And that is why trust in government in the United States by the public and for other reasons has eroded to virtually existential levels, meaning trust in government is so bad that we are seeing things like in a body where your immune system gets so bad, you start seeing really bad things, massive rashes, bloodshot eyes, whatever. We're seeing things we never expected to see. All right. So we're in serious trouble as a nation. So getting the trust in government back from the people will not be easy. But one way we can begin is ending the 7-decade lie, which is worse because it's one thing to lie and nobody knows you're lying. But it's another thing to lie to somebody, and we've all done that, when they know absolutely that you're lying to them. That's very embarrassing and very irritating. If you've ever had somebody lie to your face and you know exactly that they're lying, you probably remember the feeling you got, the anger you felt. Well, the American people have been feeling this anger for a very long time because every year, millions more Americans and around the world, tens of millions of people have figured out, yeah, there's an extraterrestrial presence. The evidence is obvious. Why is the government lying? So this is not like you lied to somebody one time. This is the American people being lied to every single day for 70 years about something that increasingly know was true. This is a catastrophic situation that needed to end 30 years ago, but it's going to end, I believe, next year. Now, what do I mean by that? I've always said that the only way to disclosure by the head of state is through hearings. You have to have congressional hearings first if you want to be minimally destructive and you want to be appropriate. And since 1968, repeated efforts have been made to get congressional hearings. I've done a couple. Greer's done a couple. I know of a couple others that were internal, and God knows how many others you don't even know about. And they've all been blocked, cold. You can't have them. We won't allow it. Can't get the hearings. Okay, fine. We couldn't get them. And so, if anything, that has helped keep the truth embargo alive. But something changed. Something profoundly changed. Because of the previous 67 years of work by citizens with no pay, no money, no support, being called fools and idiots and crazy, undermined, ridiculed by these people, and there were thousands of them, pounding away, decade after decade, we finally got to a point where we'd educated enough people in and outside government and journalists that a group within the Pentagon, and probably supported by other individuals with other agencies, made the decision it was time to move forward. And they came up with an idea how to do that. They couldn't do it directly because that would violate all kinds of laws and constitutional premises. In other words, the DOD can't just do what it wants. The boss of the DOD is the president. They created a proxy group made up of people that had worked in the MIC for decades. And they called it the To the Stars Academy. And they set it up as a public benefit corporation in the public domain in order to do things and carry forward the disclosure process in ways that the military intelligence complex couldn't. And that was launched.
We can't hear you. I cannot. We can't hear you, Stephen.
I suddenly
picking up.
I can hear you.
I can hear you fine, Steve.
Yeah, okay. What can I say? Daniel, I don't know the problem there. Forgive me. But I'm talking very loud and I've got a top mic.
We got you, Steve.
Okay. So they set up this organization to do what they could not do. It was launched in October of 2017. It immediately went to the New York Times with huge news stories. Not the announcing of the ATIP program, the announcement of Harry Reid, Senate Majority Leader's involvement in that, the announcement of the involvement of Bigelow and Bigelow Aerospace, as well as the release of gun camera footage, extraordinary gun camera footage from F-18 carrier planes in 2014 and 2004. This made massive news, right? All over the world, hundreds and hundreds of articles, but it wasn't enough to reach critical mass at that time because the United States is going through an unprecedented period of political chaos of a level that nobody, I certainly in my lifetime never thought I would see. And as a result, the news had to move on. It had to move back and cover this political chaos. And so this extraordinary development was sort of, how would you say, sidelined a little bit. Then the pandemic comes, and well, with the pandemic and the political situation, nothing could divert the news profoundly to this. Not to mention that the coverage did not continue. And so that has been going on for 3 years. And I've been watching it very closely, very closely. I have 700 articles on my website related to the TTSA and the consequent effects of its actions. I have 160 videos on my website regarding news coverage of it and statements from them. I've been following very closely the work of Christopher Mellon and Luis Elizondo. Elizondo is the intel guy working with tech and with witnesses, and Christopher Mellon is the highly experienced political guy who has been doing his thing. And what have they been doing? Fundamentally, without going on at length, here is what they did. They used a television show and other interactions to start drawing military witnesses out. They have interviewed scores of them. They've been contacted by hundreds of them. They lowered the bar for people inside the military intelligence complex to come forward by showing that witnesses can speak about this, be in the New York Times, go on television, and not have repercussions. How many witnesses, potential witnesses, have approached them? I don't know, but it's a very large number, and I'm referring to military witnesses. Meanwhile, Christopher Mellon started taking witnesses up on the Hill over a year and a half ago and briefing members of Congress and committee chairs. How many, we don't know, but several of them have referred to this, and there have been some actions on the part of some of these people that were briefed, notably Marco Rubio, who made a decision to put a section in the Intelligence Appropriations Act that called for the newly formed UAP task force in the ONI to start providing information to them 180 days after the act was passed, which hasn't happened. But nevertheless, it got a lot of news. So what does this mean? Here is what I believe it means. Quite simply, the table has been set for full, multiple hearings on the UAP issue in the United States Congress early in the Biden administration. The committee chairs have been briefed. They're on board. Meanwhile, dozens of witnesses, of military witnesses, have been lined up by Elizondo, and they will be the witnesses that will testify at these hearings. These hearings will be watched worldwide by hundreds of millions of people. The Congress will do its thing. There will be excellent questions under oath. This will go on for a while. And very clearly, the world will see what I tried to demonstrate in the citizen hearing on disclosure, that the evidence will stand up in that setting, that the witnesses are extraordinary. And while my witnesses did not testify under oath, these witnesses will testify under oath and risk of going to jail for perjury. And in due course, how long it'll take, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Then, and all of this, understand, is happening on top of the fact that there are huge numbers of people inside the government that know there's an ET presence. They're not learning anything new. And so at the appropriate point, members of the committee chairs will meet with members of the administration and members of the DOD, and they will come to the conclusion that the evidence presented in these hearings is more than sufficient to confirm the extraterrestrial presence, and therefore it is appropriate for the president to announce it and confirm it. And it will be anticlimactic. The world will have already arrived at that conclusion, minimal disruption, and the disclosure of the ET presence will take place, and this goddamn truth embargo will end. That's what's going to happen next year, barring a war in Iran or the South China Sea or God knows what other nonsense the human race comes up with. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'll be focusing on intensely for the next 3 months.
Extraordinary.
But
That's just extraordinary. Yes.
Robert, let me ask a question to both Stephen and Danny. What happens to our religious view and the concept of religion, of every major religion, based on the fact that we are not alone? And has that had a tremendous effect on the control of the releasing of what, like Stephen says, everybody knows we are not alone? What will it affect the religious viewpoint of the world, and how will they contain that perspective?
Well, that's the exact conversation that I've been engaged in, as you know. When I was at the Jesuit headquarters between 1975 and 1985, and tried to initiate these discussions with all of the major religious denominations in the United States, there was just this kind of horrified, kind of deer in the headlights kind of look on their face when we tried to do this. But between that time, 1977, and then 2009, there was quite a major shift that has taken place here, primarily because of the discovery of the exoplanets. That's the process that's underway now. The entire national security state infrastructure, which of course includes NASA, and of course includes SpaceX and all of these private corporations, Bigelow and all the rest of the people. The entire community has now mounted these major space-based telescopes, which are examining the planets that are orbiting the various stars, some closer, some farther away. But the process is underway now, pursuant to which the collective scientific national security state community is going to be acknowledging first water on other planets, water in the atmosphere, conditions of life on other exoplanets, and they're going to first begin to discover some evidence of microbiotic life on other planets, then kind of multicellular life. And then step by step, they're going to be discovering one planet after another that has more and more complex life. And so that they have, this is the national security state, scientific, logical, positivist infrastructure, have established this process by means of which they want to undertake, quote, disclosure. Now, they're trying to completely ignore the entire phenomenon of extraterrestrial visitations, abductions, face-to-face encounters. They're trying to get that all behind them. They're going to try to pretend like, well, that was a bad part of history. We don't want to confront it. We don't want to admit that we've done that. Let's just get to this other process of acknowledging that life exists. What's happened now is the Catholic Church, specifically the Jesuit order, they have now started convening meetings in Rome and at the Vatican, bringing in scientists from around the world, biophysicists and astrobiologists, etc. They actually, on November 10th of 2009, have actually come to the conclusion that they needed to make a major public statement about this. And they did. Professor Jose Gabriel Funes, Father Funes, a Jesuit priest, who was the director of the Pontifical Observatory at Castel Gandolfo, gathered together scientists at the Vatican press office, right in their press room, and issued the public statement and said, now that more and more of these exoplanets are being discovered, it's quite clear that much sooner than had previously been anticipated, we are going to come to have to recognize that life exists elsewhere in the universe. Therefore, we've reached a point where it is necessary to begin an extremely important conversation among our human species to address the profound philosophical and theological questions that are posed to us by the existence of life elsewhere in the universe. Now, in light of my capacity at the Jesuit headquarters as the head of their policy division, I reached out to Father Funes and met with him face to face right within a matter of days from the issuance of that statement. And within 3 minutes in our conversation, he acknowledged to me that he's not talking just about microbiological life. He said, we are talking about another highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but categorically distinct from human species and other knowledgeable species in the universe. And indeed, the major classified study that we did under President Carter back in 1977 came to the conclusion that there was a 98% probability that there were from 2 to 10 other highly intelligent and highly technologically developed other species right within our own galaxy. And so now this dialogue has been started, and I believe that's the reason I'm raising this point. I believe that an absolutely integral part of this so-called disclosure project or disclosure process has to involve the major theological community of our human family, because every single one of the worldviews, this entire octave of worldviews, there are 8 categorically distinct worldviews that have evolved in our human family. And I've had some discussion about these things, but virtually every single one of them is rooted in the concept that our human species is the only sentient, intelligent species in the entire universe. And so that thereby posing the point that you raise, David, you raised it, and that is, what is, and now you're asking the question, Damien, is what is the impact going to be on the, quote, religious institutions? And of course, that has the sub-question, what is the relationship between the religious institutions in our planet and our governing structures? And the reality is that the religious view and the governing structures are all rooted in our understanding, scientific understanding of physics. And the still present major paradigm is the Newtonian Cartesian paradigm, is that the world is a material dimension made up of these indivisible little bowling or billiard balls called atoms that bounce around each other. And as your point is, Damien, that it's ignoring the fact that not only is our species in the entire reality of the universe electric, it's based in quantum reality. And that this whole shift that started from 1923 to 1926, with Planck and the others, to really understand that the fundamental underlying assumptions of Newtonian particle physics is not true.
Exactly.
And so what we've been going through, the arc of history that we are in right now, is our human species attempting to adjust all of our institutions to this extraordinary set of discoveries that were made between 1923 and 1926, this undermining the entire Newtonian Cartesian worldview. That is the substructure on which we built this concept that our human species is the only intelligent species in the universe. So that's what I'm saying, is that the time period that we find ourselves in right now is the attempt to reformulate our fundamental religious. Remember now, religion. People are constantly in our community say, "Well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious." You need to remember, religion. The Latin root of religion is relegare, which is to relink our separate perceptions of ourselves, our intellectually grounded separate views of ourselves as distinct entities in the universe, not intimately related and integrated into the universe, that we're somehow separated from the universe by means of our intellect, the Latin root of which, of course, is intellectus, the ability to distinguish the difference between. We're rooted in this concept of distinguishing ourselves from the rest of the universe. We need to overcome that process through understanding of quantum physics, and that the entire religious institutions of our species need to be updated, need to evolve up into integrating this concept of quantum physics and understanding our integrated relationship with the entire universe. Now, this is the kind of strategic overview of which, strangely enough, our relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization is just a subpart. So this impact on the religious institutions of the discovery of extraterrestrial civilization is in fact part and parcel of our whole attempt to try to come to grips with this next step we need to take as a human family, to substitute for Newtonian Cartesian logical positivist material physics the idea of quantum reality. And that's what we need to do.
Okay,
and the
Danny?
Catholic Church has to play a major role in that happening in Western civilization, as does the Jesuit order, which they're in the process of trying to do right now.
All right, Stephen, how have you run into this as an issue in what you're doing in the political aspect? Where is the religious position of those political positioning that you've encountered? Because it is so important that religion still dominates politics, whether it's a war or basic economic strata. So what have you encountered?
Let me give an excellent political take on that. A couple of points. First of all, one of the most pernicious aspects of the truth embargo was to make religion the scapegoat, in a sense, for the truth embargo. They pushed the idea out and serviced it and supported it, namely that we'd love to tell you about the ET presence, but the people who practice religion in this world are so fragile, so weak, so stupid, that they will simply fall to pieces, lose their minds, give up their faith.
My point.
This was a lie from the day it started. I doubt you could find a handful of people inside the Pentagon that think that's true. It's nonsense. It always was. And it's nasty. And it's irritated me. The evangelicals in particular were, how would you say, scapegoated on this. That's the point I would like to say. So that's one thing. If you're a religious person, you do not want the government playing that game. And that should never happen again. Now, having said that, religion has been changing since the Druids built the Stonehenge. All right? It changes all the time. It morphs and expands, contracts. It's gone through all kinds of various upheavals. So this idea, oh my God, if we announce the extraterrestrial presence, particularly after 70 years of amassing evidence and hundreds of thousands of articles and God knows how much awareness, that religion will not be able to adapt. This is crap. It always has been. And so what can I say? Religion has been here for 10,000 years. It will be here for a very long time to come. I am not worried about religion. And so I don't even factor it in, frankly, to my actions. I'm happy that religion will handle this very well. Now, we already have plenty of evidence of that. There are religions all over the world that are pretty much comfortable with this and have been, even going back to their origin. The Catholic Church is kind of led in this because it gets a lot of publicity, but it's a lie. It always has been a lie. Now, having said all that, let me also point out that, and this is more of a personal view, I believe that non-secular government is absolutely the preferential way to govern in this world. Religious-based government is a mistake for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is there are thousands of religions. So when you go down that road, then what? And so while religion plays its role and it's important to the human condition, do I think a disclosure is going to somehow create an imbalance there where non-secular government becomes dominant and religion is completely shut out? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that most of the world's people will have their worldview profoundly expanded. They will be extremely excited about things they're going to learn. And they'll start to figure out how this new understanding of the galaxy and the universe relates to what they believe in the spiritual sense. And they will come up with lots of interesting interpretations. Some will be cult-like and a little toxic, but that's always happening. But I'm sure the Catholic Church and Buddhism and Hinduism and all the others will not only come up with their approach to it, but I think you'll see religions all over the world saying, now that you've confirmed the ET presence, let me introduce you to some of our ancient texts, some of our history. Because when you look there, you'll discover, wow, we were actually addressing that in various ways 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. We were way ahead of you, governments, right? And so that's what I see happening. I'm not concerned. I hope it'll all work out. But, what can I say? The future is not guaranteed. But religion is not the problem with disclosure. It is the tool the government used to help deny it.
But it will also give us a better ability to explain and understand so many archaeological sites that exist all over the world, as opposed to the religious concept that it cannot be done, explained, and men built it and all of that stuff. So I see it, but I listen to this stuff all the time from the spiritual point of view, and how religion is so used to debunk 6,000 years old. The earth is only 6,000 years old when you have buildings that are 20,000 years old. And I think that this exposure has to come. I think that there is no other way to explain so many of the things that's occurring and have been unexplained so far. So thanks, guys.
Well, let me add this. Religion and science have somewhat been in competition for a long time, particularly in the last couple of 100 years. And I get it. Religion had certain tenets. Science was learning these things 6,000 years and so forth. Okay, fine. And yeah, it got a little testy. But amazingly enough, the number of people practicing religion in the world is still, billions after all this science has come up. Okay. But what's kind of ironic about this is that after all that competition, once the ET presence is acknowledged, right, and everybody starts watching all the ancient aliens over again, they will discover that the ET reality is all over religious history in their text, right? And their teaching and so forth, oddly enough. And so in a sense, religion will get its revenge by saying to science, okay, you're right. The world is not 6,000 years old. But hey, we sort of were talking and trying to relate about this ET experience thousands of years ago, while you people didn't know how to open up a can.
And how many paintings from the Renaissance have UFOs painted into their skyline?
Sure. So it's going to work out. It's going to be just fine. In fact, I predict post-disclosure, religious participation, meaning people directly involved in their religion, will increase, not decrease.
Let me make an additional point here. It's a slightly shift in topic. Remember that one of the major themes that has been reported by contactees, both direct physical contactees and those through channeling over the past 70 years, about their contacts and communications with extraterrestrial civilization, is the deep concern that's being expressed by the extraterrestrial people about our environment. About the threat of nuclear war and the threat to our environment through this pollution that we're engaged in. You've seen a lot of it in the latest thing with Jim Fox's thing on the phenomenon. Also, Randy's thing coming up, the Ariel school about the kids in Africa. When they have encounters with extraterrestrial beings, they're constantly saying, look, you people have to stop polluting your planet. You're going to destroy the whole planet. It's going to ruin your entire ecosystem. They've actually taken people into craft and shown them plasma big screens showing the Earth sort of decimated from our climate. It's important to remember that the first encyclical that was issued by Pope Francis was on global climate change and the fact that we have to come to grips with stopping this pollution of our planet. So that there's an extraordinarily interesting coalescence coming together of what the extraterrestrial message is talking about and the major position that is being taken by Francis, the new Jesuit guy who's the Pope at the church. It's really important to understand he's just come out with a second major encyclical that's called On Social Friendship, talking all about the need for our people to take care of each other, to attend to the least well-off who are going to be the victims of major massive global climate change. And this is something that the national security state is looking at taking advantage of, this kind of onset of global climate change, to establish a potential major national security state apparatus around the world to cope with the massive migration of millions of people from the seacoasts with the rising sea levels and the desertification. This is something that I think we need to look to understand that the extraterrestrial beings, while limiting to a significant degree their direct public interface with our people on the planet have been attempting for the last 70 years to try to warn us both about nuclear weapons by appearing at our facilities and turning off the missiles, as we all know about, knocking the missiles out of the sky during tests, etc. And on the other hand, warning us about global climate change. These are two extraordinarily important pieces of the message from the extraterrestrial being, as well as this third issue that we're all talking about directly, about our need to get a better understanding of our metaphysical relationship with the universe, and getting our religions kind of brought up to date with understanding what's going on here without them intervening directly. So those of us that are involved in the ET community over the last, to here, I guess most of us have been involved for at least 50 years, in all this process. David, you and I were together when you first arrived in Washington. Remember, we're setting up your office at your sister's house. I mean, we've been at this thing for 50 years together, all of us, trying to get people to help understand this. So we're at this extraordinarily important moment right now where this revelation is in the process of taking place. We'll see what the Biden administration is going to be doing about it. We'll see what Panetta and others are going to be involved with this. We'll see how this is going to go. I'm not certain they're going to do it right away, Dave, because of this pandemic and the problem of trying to get the structures back to normal during the Biden administration. I think what we need to look to is the administration that's coming in 2024. The new administration, Joe Biden isn't going to run for a second term. What we need to find out is how quickly the Biden administration is going to really try to come into owning this issue, moving it forward in this time of extraordinary flux, socially, economically, politically, that's going on right now. We have to find out about this, and so we need to have some communications with Panetta and the other people that have been involved in this, and we'll see how quickly this is going to take place. But I do think this next few years is going to be really critical in moving forward this entire process that we're talking about.
Let me add this. I think it will happen next year, and I think it's imperative that it happens next year. But let me expand on what you just said. Hundreds of thousands of reports have been submitted by contactees to researchers around the world. It's well over 500,000, could be as many as 1 million. And yes, there's consistent reports in which the ETs show contactees massive destruction in the future, which I think implies like a nuclear war. They also show environmental destruction, and of course we know that they tamper with our nuclear weapons. So what does that say? Well, it seems to say that they certainly care about human life. They don't want us to kill ourselves. They also care about life in general. They don't want us to destroy our own biosphere. One might say that how would you say, demonstrates a certain spiritual component to the extraterrestrial worldview. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing.
Agreed.
And something else. On occasion, a contactee, if they have the opportunity, and they do, get to ask a question, of the ETs. I mean, if you were abducted and you were sitting in the craft and there was ETs in the room, you would want to ask them a question, would you not? I mean, yeah. I mean, you just want to make small talk. And so very often the question they ask is, do you believe in God, or is there a God? And the answer, as far as I know, without exception, is yes. Now, does that mean they're just humoring the contactee? Don't want to upset them, right? I mean, I'm kind of, putting you out a little bit. You were sleeping soundly in your bed. Or is it that what they believe? I don't know. But these are the kinds of indications that, frankly, should let us know that there's no reason not to move forward with this. And Danny, at any time you want to get on another forum, I'd love to have maybe a longer discussion with you about getting disclosure done quickly and later, as you pointed out. I think you could make your points, I could make mine, and it would be a very, I think, elucidating discussion.
I hear you. Yeah, no, I think this is an extraordinarily important issue that we're dealing with here, and I think that this is a period that is the most fluid of any time in our lives since perhaps back in 1968, when all the confrontation was going on over the Vietnam War, and we were all sort of just coming into our full adulthood and trying to deal with the injustices of our government national security state. But right now, everything is so fluid. Not just the pandemic and the economics that are involved, the politics that are involved, but this issue here, this very issue of the onset of when you get Harry Reid and Panetta and the others talking publicly about the fact that they know that there's extraterrestrial life and that the time has come to really have our government structures come to grips with this. These are extraordinarily important signals. That in the midst of kind of the reformulation of what our spiritual, economic, political, and cultural view is going to be of the world here in the 21st century is underway right now. As I said, I view the Biden administration, and the few people that are saying, "Oh, I don't think there's going to be a Biden administration because Trump won the election." I mean, take a break from that. Okay, the reality is there's going to be a Biden administration, and the Biden administration is going to be, in their own view, a transitional administration. The question is, transition to what? Right? That's the key to this thing. Are they going to try to be a transition back the way it was before? Even they don't dare say that. They say, "Oh no, we're going to build it better than it was." Other people are arguing it's just going to be a third Obama administration. The reality is that the Biden administration is going to be dedicated to trying to sort of get things back to some kind of level of stability. That's going to be the key. And what we need to do is have part of this stability have a new, much more just vision of economics. It has to be a much more just and egalitarian understanding of participatory democracy. And we have to have a whole different concept of our religions. We have to have a whole different relationship with extraterrestrial civilization. This is an extraordinary moment. Now, we've all, as I said, put in 50 years in this particular field. And so that we have to exercise great responsibility here in trying to make certain that we have a responsible voice in this process by means of which this is going to take place. And this is going to be viewed as a substantial threat to the national security state.
100%.
Yes, and so that we need to understand they view this as a substantial threat to them. And what we have to do is figure out how to garner our allies in the new movement, the movement that is going to be attempting to be, in a sense, the administration in waiting. Everybody knows, everybody with a political IQ above room temperature in Washington, D.C. knows that the Biden administration is only going to be for one term. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that they're trying to, enshrine, Kamala Harris as the next president. The fact of the matter is there's a much more younger, much more feminine, much more liberal and progressive element in the entire political community in the United States that is waiting to rise into leadership. And we need to make the issue of UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence an integral part of that rising progressive view. That's what I think we really need to do here, and overcome this dialectical confrontation going on between the progressives and the conservatives. We've got to bring people together to understand that this is such an essential part of our future that we've got to come to grips with it at this unique moment when things are so fluid, because they're going to come together over the period of the Obama administration, whether it's sooner, Steve, or whether it's takes a little more time in the administration. Whatever it is, that this period is going to be a transitional period, and we need to reach out to all the people that we know that are involved in this process to get the UFO ET issue integrated as an essential part of this, just as we do the religious communities. So we have the fundamentalist, right-wing, reactionary fundamentalist religions have taken sway over the last 4 years, and we see what the damage is that's been done by that. That we need to have a much more progressive and open view of what religion really entails. It's got to be much more infused with social justice. It's got to deal with the environmental challenge that we face right now. And I think that the elements that are involved in the Green New Deal that are so essential for our future are going to play a defining role in what the next administration is going to look like. I think that you guys and everybody ought to realize that it's almost certain that there's going to be a major competition between Kamala Harris and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for the nomination, for the Democratic Party nomination in 2024. And everybody's going to come to know that within a very brief period of time. And that this hostile, angry, militarized national security state, make America first kind of element in the Republican Party is going to be atrophied. And so we need to have this be a constructive process, a friendly process, a completely open and honest process that we can all play a major part in, because even those of us that are involved in this thing this morning have played such a role in this over the past 50 years. People are going to be expecting us to take a responsible role in this. So Steve, all the years you put in here in Washington, D.C., all the years, Damien, that you've put in, and you, Robert, and all the other people that are listening to us right now, we need to come together and get a policy figured out of how we're going to work with all the people in both political parties and in the Green Party and in the Libertarian Party and all of these different organizations to understand that the issue of our relationship with extraterrestrial intelligence is got to be a major factor in the evolution of where we're going to be going in the 21st century when we come out of this period of fluidity right now.
Will AOC be old enough in 2024 to run president?
Yeah, big surprise, Danny. She turns 35 on October 13th of 2024.
All right.
So she will be the youngest candidate for president in history, just as Joe Biden was the youngest candidate for the Senate in history. He was elected when he was 29 years old. You have to be 30 before you can be inaugurated. But he ran while he was 29. He won and was actually inaugurated when he was 30. And the same thing is going to be true of AOC. But what we have to do is have not just AOC come out as like a personality contest. There has to be an entire cabinet. We have to know who our Secretary of State is going to be, who our Environmental Protection Agency people are, who our FBI people are, who the CIA people are. What is that new administration? What does the administration in waiting look like, so that we don't scare people, so that people aren't afraid of what's coming? This is a transition, and we need to have a full cabinet level person who is responsible for the issue of extraterrestrial intelligence. Just like we have to have a full level cabinet person that's in charge of dealing with the environmental crisis and how we usher in this Green New Deal in a way that's fair to everybody and doesn't frighten people and doesn't strike everybody as being just a Trojan horse for socialism. You know, this is an extraordinarily important thing that is getting ready to happen. Okay, and people who are on the extreme right wing and motivated by fear and hostility and antagonism, have got to get over it. We've got to rise above this type of tribalism and get together and make this thing happen.
Whatever the future, political future of the country is, whatever direction it might go, and who might become the next president or anything else, we're not going to be able to bring the extraterrestrial aspects of the extraterrestrial reality into that process until we get disclosure. You can't bring something into a process when the government is still denying that it exists. And so you get disclosure, and then you have the opportunity to speak up and be heard. And so disclosure has to happen immediately or soon, or it's going to be excluded from all of that. Now, the other thing I'll mention is this.
I agree.
The national security thing. I want people to understand the TTSA from the beginning has put an emphasis on national security. There's no question. They have used the word threat. They've also used the word potential threat. Potential threat is what they should be saying, and never just threat, but whatever. Why? Well, for one thing, they weren't going to get the attention of the media. They weren't going to get the attention of the members of committee chairs on the Hill to get hearings if they were going to approach them with the idea the ETs are here to save us, and we need to start planning our reception, our welcoming part. No. National security is the safe political basis on which these hearings can be held, and it's appropriate. All right. Does that mean that the TTSA is trying to establish a an expanded space force to fight off the ETs? No. And in fact, if you listen to what Elizondo and Christopher Mellon have said, particularly statements they made at the end of the last of the unidentified programs, unidentified Inside America's UFO investigation, the very last one, you will see that they are not thinking national security as the ultimate outcome. They're not thinking threat, but rather they're using that as the fundamental basis to get us where we have to go. I am not concerned that national security is going to dominate the post-disclosure discussions. I think it'll fade away fairly quickly. So I just want to make that clear in case people are thinking that this idea of the ET threat is at the core of the process underway. It is not at the core, but it is, I think, essential to getting to where we need to go.
I'm going to echo that. If I can just jump in here for a second, if in sort of because of our time frame, summarizing what everybody is saying here, you have the spiritual ramifications and position, you have the political position, and then you have the general public, the wide-eyed or eyes wide shut public that is hypnotized by all this, and it is scary. There's a time of how will the earth be birthed into a slightly larger expression? How is that going to happen? If you look at what you were saying here earlier, like Danny and Danny specifically, the Bible, the religious position, the Gita, the Sanskrit, the idea that there's some kind of ascension or birthing point where we go to the next level. Now, everything that has ever happened that we thought couldn't happen has happened. We're taking pictures on other planets. We're discovering all the other microbiotic life. Now we have one on our planet that is threatening us. I think the disclosure thing probably comes out a lot like Steve says. It's going to have to come out in such a way to get you used to the idea. Because the idea of, we've all been around this a long time, guys. Extraterrestrials, the whole story is causes disruption or causes concern or people to check out and view us in that light that we're not all there or something like that. Disclosure has to get us used to the idea. And then there maybe is the unexpected, and that would be an attempted landing. I'm not talking about the attempted landings we've already seen in remote areas. I'm talking about an attempted landing, perhaps even in a major metropolitan area, which I think would shatter the fabric of this reality, and we're not really ready for it. So probably the truth embargo is probably the clearest path to getting people used to the idea that, the surveillance state has that other side of it. It has an ET story behind it. It goes back to the very first thing I said when I had to mention Elon Musk. He must definitely be on the inside of this story of exploration of another culture that is dropping into our atmosphere, thus the need to monitor that outside presence. It's enough with the Chinese and the North Koreans, isn't it? No, it's not enough. We have an ET presence.
And his relationship with Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we don't know something there too. Yeah. And finally, I wanted to just throw this out. Is it possible, since the narrative right now is the COVID story, is it even possible or conceivable that this has some kind of extraterrestrial backline story behind it? No. Stephen says no.
No,
Absolutely not.
no.
Okay. That's for our audience.
Let me make another point. All this political hubbub we've been going through, this real big thing happening, right? The nation is really divided, and they're squaring off, and they're threatening to do this and threatening to do that. History is going to look back on this as just a burp in the history of Americans' body politic. It's going to be looked at as a mild rash on the elbow. The disclosure event, which I believe is going to take place next year,